Welcome to Blaze News, the mandate day 54. I'm Jill Savage. Tonight on the agenda, President Trump threw his support behind the budget plan that has been passed by the Senate, and he's called on the House to pass it quickly. The bill includes permanent tax cuts, spending cuts, and border security initiatives. On Truth Social, he wrote, "The House and Senate and our great administration are going to work tirelessly on creating one big, beautiful bill, an appropriate name if Congress so likes." Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt called on House Republicans to deliver on the mandate the American people voted for.
The Republicans received an overwhelming mandate from the American public to govern. We have an extraordinary opportunity. There are key promises that the president made to the American people in this bill: tax cuts, securing the border, deregulation, unleashing the might of American energy. These are good things for the American people. The president wants to see this get done, and that's why he's engaging with lawmakers today.
Continuing Trump's tax cuts is crucial if we want to make American manufacturing great again. If the Tax Cuts and Job Act expires, then the average American will see a tax hike of 22%. It will also cost 6 million jobs and $540 million in wages. Now, preserving the tax cuts would add $284 billion in economic growth, and that is just from manufacturing. Indonesia joined the group of countries rushing to negotiate the Trump administration over reciprocal tariffs. The nation's chief economic minister said that they will not take any retaliatory measures towards the United States. Trade Ambassador Jameson Greer testified in the Senate today and defended Trump's tariff policy.
Our trade deficit, driven by these non-reciprocal conditions, is a manifestation of the loss of the nation's ability to make, to grow, to build. And the president recognizes the urgency of the moment.
In immigration news, Chief Justice John Roberts sided with the Trump administration by temporarily pausing a lower court's decision to return a man who was mistakenly deported for being a member of MS-13. The administration admitted that the deportation was an administrative error, but maintains that the accusations that the man is still a gang member. Roberts issued the administrative stay to allow the full court more time to consider the case, and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem praised this decision on an X in a video.
Today is a bad day to be a terrorist in the United States of America. Today, the Supreme Court came out with a decision that reaffirmed President Trump was correct in using his authority on using the Alien Enemies Act to deport terrorists out of this country. Thank you, President Trump, for your leadership in making America safe.
Well, finally, Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that he will undergo his annual physical at Walter Reed Examination Center this Friday. In a post, he assured us that he has never felt better, but these things must be done. Now let's go ahead and bring in Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson. So MP, the immigration case, that's an interesting one there in the news cycle. It's not something that we see every day. Oh, sorry, we thought you were MS-13, but you're still a gang member.
Look, this is a case that a lot of people have been waiting for, right? People have been waiting to see what's going to happen as all these district courts try to say, no, the administration can't do what they want to do. And what you see is the first admission here of reality, of constitutional reality, of the fact that the district courts can't just do whatever they want and tell the president and administration what to do, whether there's errors or not. So it's a question of where the fundamental authority lies in our system of government. And what you see here is, again, the first admission of reality that the executive branch makes these decisions.
Well, we have a great show lined up for you today. Steve Baker will expose an FBI appointee's disturbing ties to the J6 persecution just ahead. The talk is tariffs. We know that they've thrown the global economy into chaos, and potential widespread inflation tied to massive supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on us all. But there is a silver lining that most people missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from these sweeping tariffs. Now, while these new policies are triggering significant financial chaos, the administration has preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. If you're concerned concerned about your savings, I encourage you to have a free consultation with Birch Gold Precious Metals Specialists. The first step, text my name, Jill, to the number 989898 and receive your free no-obligation info kit on gold. And you can learn how gold and silver in a tax-sheltered IRA account could help you. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. I love to go out there and figure out what Birch Gold can do for you. They have a better A rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful customers. So text my name, Jill, to the number 989898. Again, that's Jill to the number 989898 to claim your free info kit right now.
What is it about Jensen that concerns you that he's even on the list of possibilities of having this immensely powerful role?
He was a key figure in this domestic terror push against January 6ers. According to testimony before the House, he treated them all as terrorists and was one of the key instigators in pushing the narrative within the bureaucracy that these folks needed to be jailed and ferreted out.
So they're talking about Steve Jensen, who was recently named the assistant director of the FBI's Washington field office. Now, this comes as a shock to conservatives who were counting on FBI Director Kash Patel to clean up the bureau because Jensen was a key figure in the domestic terror push against January 6th protesters. Blaze News investigative journalists Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman detailed this development in a piece for Blaze News, and Steve joins us right now. So, what should we make of this decision to have Steve Jensen out there in the Washington field office?
What should we make of it? I will tell you, this is the most confounding thing to come out of the administration thus far, especially out of the new FBI, the new Department of Justice. As you know, we expected and we hoped that Kash and Dan Bongino collectively would be a wrecking ball in that agency or that bureau. In fact, that's what they alluded to and told us that they would do in so many interviews and in Kash Patel's own book. We gave them here at the Blaze, and myself included, our full-throated endorsement of their nominations. We applauded their confirmations, and we look forward to the best, and we still hope for the best from them. But this one doesn't make any sense for a lot of reasons. The first and most significant thing is that this happened over a week and a half ago when this was announced internally through an email that was sent to about 2,500 FBI employees there in the Washington field office. This announcement was made to them. Obviously, you can't send out an email in D.C. to 2,500 people and not expect it to be leaked to the press somewhere, to somebody. And in fact, on Friday of last week, the New York Times, not in an article about this, but kind of parenthetically 6 or 7 paragraphs down, just mentioned this appointment as though it actually really happened. And they were even confounded. They said this seemed to be kind of contrary to what Kash Patel has promised the MAGA movement, the Trump supporters, and the J6 community. And then the next day, Gateway Pundit came out and said that it was fake news and that they had that on a highly placed source in the FBI. Well, then, of course, we acquired through the Blaze Media that email confirming that this had actually happened. In fact, that he was already an employee, but it was not announced in any way. This was done kind of, surreptitiously under the cover of darkness. Nobody announced it. There was no press release. There was no announcement from Kash Patel or any other FBI spokesman. And it wasn't until we caused a ruckus through our X thread on Sunday that finally, after reaching out to the FBI Washington field office yesterday, that they finally responded and said, just go check the website. And we did. And we went to the WFO website, and Stephen Jensen's name has been added as acting director in charge. And that's the only confirmation we have so far that he's actually in that position.
Steve, give us a little more color on Jensen and why people are so upset. What did he do? What did he do? Why are people so upset?
Well, it's the part of the agency that he was in charge of. I mean, he was tasked with heading up the actual investigation all the way through the prosecution of these individuals that were charged with crimes. As you know, myself, I was caught up in this dragnet as well, being a journalist on that day, and so I may or may not have some personal feelings about this, but trying to put those aside as best I can and be straightforward and as a journalist on this, there were a lot lot of lives that were ruined. My life was not destroyed. We've talked about that ad nauseum. So we don't need to go in that at all here, but a lot of lives were destroyed. We're talking about misdemeanor defendants, nonviolent defendants, families that were SWAT raided by FBI SWAT teams at 6:30 in the morning, guns up on their family, on their children, on their wives. People lost their homes, they lost their jobs, their careers, they were kicked out of their churches, they lost their marriages, all manner of family destruction and lives that were ruined as a result of this process. And this guy was at the actual forefront. He was the tip of the spear in the agency that was seeing this forward. And then, of course, as we know, as they established this narrative, the left, the Biden administration, saw this as an extra advantage to go after all of the basic conservative protesting type of organizations. We're talking about the families that protested at your local school board meetings. We're talking about the traditional Catholics and such as that. And this guy was in charge of that and advocating that they go ahead and move forward in all these positions and all of these initiatives as well.
Well, you talked about narrative. I think that that's one of the more interesting parts of Jensen's particular story. Tell our audience about the twice daily phone calls that he was a part of.
Yeah, this was a surprise to me as I began to pull back the layers of the onion on this story over the weekend. In 4 years of my own investigations into all things January 6th, I had no idea that there was a twice daily phone call that began only 2 days after January 6th, in which the FBI was inviting in through one of their special resources that they have all of the policing agencies across the country, local, state police, as well as the governor's mansions, as well as the mayoral residences and offices at every city in America. They could sign in twice daily and get the narrative, the marching order, and the agenda that was being portrayed. And this was basically, I don't even know any other way to say it. This was a national forum for which they were able to indoctrinate all of the law enforcement agencies across the country, the mayor's offices, the governors across the country, and teach them, tell them, and show them how to go out and prosecute these individuals. Now, look, I've said from the beginning, had the Department of Justice not overreached from the very beginning, had it just gone off after the most violent offenders that day, we probably wouldn't even be talking about January 6th right now. There probably would have been no pardons that day. But the overreach was so egregious. It was so massive. In some ways, despite the lives that were destroyed, they kind of did us a favor and showed their hand when they turned that card over and showed us what they were willing to do and how far they were willing to push to go after innocent victims, what I call the accidental tourists that day, the grandmothers or the young couples that walked in, had never been in the Capitol before. They walked through an open door, took a couple of selfies, and their lives were destroyed and ruined. And this was spearheaded by Stephen Jensen, the now acting director, or rather the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office in D.C. itself.
Okay, and here's the interesting thing about this story, right? I mean, this is appalling that this guy would be promoted. It's clear they knew who he was because they, as you've made clear, they were quiet about it, right, until they were poked. Yeah. They didn't issue a press release or anything like that. So they knew he was a problem. So what do the they that we're talking about say? And, of course, many in our audience, and I think all of us, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino seem like great people who are dedicated to the cause and there to implement the agenda. So this is awful puzzling. Now, Dan Bongino has said, he's responded to the backlash on X, saying this. He said, I want to reassure you that nothing that is happening here is happening by accident. Because of the sensitivity of what the FBI deals with, both the director and I have to be circumspect in what we can make public. Bad guys read this stuff too. Neither one of us came here to play games. And let me go to the next one as well. I mean, in another post, he added, when you see something happen and the entire story isn't public and the underlying facts aren't all public, it may appear counterintuitive to a reform agenda. Hint, hint. I promise you, it's not an accident. So here is Bongino going out of his way to say, as this firestorm grows, what we were saying earlier, trust the plan, right? I mean, he's saying, like, trust the plan. There is a plan. We have to do this for various reasons behind the scenes. Some of us have heard different accounts of what those reasons are. So what do you make of that?
Well, we are assuming that Bongino was responding to this controversy.
Right.
He does not specifically address it.
Right.
If in fact he was responding to that, it still does not answer one of the hardest questions that I think, and one of the most important questions that I have, is why have we been a week and a half into this appointment and there's been no announcement from the FBI, not even the lowest level public relations or spokesperson from the FBI. There's been no announcement from Kash Patel. There's been no press release. Look, when Stephen Jensen was appointed as special agent in charge of the field office in Columbia, South Carolina, there was a press release about that. There's always fanfare. There's always an announcement about important positions when they are filled like this. And for him to take over the most important position in the Washington field office with no announcement, no press release, and then after millions of tweets and reposts and articles now that have gone out about this and the controversy around it and the backlash that's happening, and still the only thing that we have seen posted from Kash Patel on his X account so far is the intramural fundraising hockey game that they had in Chicago over the weekend, and maybe a couple of other arrests, but nothing to do with this particular controversy whatsoever. So they are obviously ignoring it for some reason, and what Bongino is asking us to do is trust the plan. So I don't know what else to do except wait and see. But we still have the lingering question: why are you elevating who is clearly a bad actor in the January 6th story, instead of eliminating those bad actors as we were promised?
Well, I know one thing, Steve. I know that you are definitely going to be staying on this story. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
And MP, when we look at the story, there are just a lot of questions that are still around it. And like I said, just wait and see. Give them a little bit of time, maybe.
Well, trust but verify. I mean, what Steve is doing, what Joe did in the article is lay out. This is why people are upset. It's understandable why, and we'll see what happens. But we can trust that Bongino comes through, but we need to hold people accountable as well, and that is exactly what we'll do.
Well, don't go anywhere. We'll have Chris Bedford's exclusive interview on the future of American energy coming up. Well, there's a great family movie for you this Easter. It's from Angel Studios. You know, the studio behind Sound of Freedom. They're releasing The King of Kings. A father tells his son the greatest story ever told, and it begins as a bedtime tale that becomes a life-changing journey. Through vivid imagination, the boy walks alongside Jesus, witnessing his miracles, facing his trials, and understanding the ultimate sacrifice. The King of Kings invites us to rediscover the enduring power of hope, love, and redemption through the eyes of a child. Now, the cast is incredible. Voices are done by Oscar Isaac, Pierce Brosnan, Mark Hamill, just to name a few. And the animation, it's beautiful. It's the perfect film to enjoy with your family this Easter. Everyone should go see King of Kings in theaters this Friday. Be sure to get your tickets at angel.com/Jill. That's angel.com/Jill. Energy and resources are still on his mind. Donald Trump said today that we need more than double the amount of electricity that we have right now. Chris Bedford sat down with Daniel Turner to discuss a massive loan from the U.S. government to finance liquid natural gas abroad and the energy and AI race against China. Watch.
Joining me now is Daniel Turner, a friend of the show and founder and leader of Power the Future, a nonprofit organization that represents American energy workers and smaller entrepreneurial energy companies that are out there doing the work to make sure our homes are powered. Daniel, thank you for joining us again. Welcome back.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
So you caught my eye Friday morning. I know it's been a couple days now, but you sent out a tweet when Francis Macron was threatening the United States, saying that they're not going to bow to any of these tariffs. They're not going to be eliminating their policies. In fact, they're willing to start penalizing the United States. They're going to up the ante. They're going to be treated as a great power. That's fine. I get it. You said maybe the United States should consider canceling its massive loan to France. One of the loans is to pay for liquid natural gas exploration in Mozambique. And this was done through the federal government, as I understand. And then you saw shortly afterwards, Rick Grinnell at the White House also thought this was a very good idea because he responded to you and said, I'm going to be bringing this to the president's attention, it's another chip to be negotiating with. So tell me about this project. Why is the United States taxpayer, even in the form of a loan, giving money to a foreign government in France to pay for an energy project in a foreign government in Mozambique?
It's a great question, and it's investing in an industry that is going to directly compete with America's industry. And we can always have a conversation about foreign aid and when it comes to Africa, should we be building schools and libraries? And I get it. And there's a time and place for that conversation. But this isn't philanthropy. This is a grant, a loan to a French company that's building a liquid natural gas pipeline in Mozambique. And when it's built, Mozambique will be exporting that LNG. And they're a heck of a lot closer to a lot of these Asian markets than we are. And so it's presumable that it's pretty obvious that a lot of these Asian companies will buy LNG from Mozambique now. And this is all facilitated through this XM Bank, the Export-Import Bank. And I think one of the things DOGE is uncovering is there are dozens of these NGOs, these non-government organizations that are sort of taxpayer funded, sort of government, but not really. Look at the World Bank, for example, during COVID. No one ever elected anyone at the World Bank. We don't get to legislate before the World Bank or appeal to them, but yet they set COVID policies, and governors and mayors all across the country were like, well, the World Bank, the WHO, the World Health Organization, the WHO, they set out a new rule, and this is what we're going to do in our state. And you said, well, who's the WHO? World Bank is another example. XM Bank is one of these. It's one of these NGOs. Talk about unelected bureaucrats, right? It's one of these NGOs that no one elected, no one knows who runs it, and yet they have power to set policy. And in this case, they have power to create competitors for America's natural gas industry, foreign competitors, and none of us have any say in the matter.
See, that's the strange part. I remember that the Republicans got close during the Tea Party years to getting rid of the XM Bank. The Kochs were all behind it. Tim Carney over at the Washington Examiner and AEI was the leading voice. He's written a couple books on the subject matter. And the pushback from American companies and some people who are now in charge right now, as trade restrictionists and people who want to reshore American jobs, is that the Export-Import Bank does for American companies what a lot of European governments do for their companies, which is they subsidize it. Air France is subsidized by the French government, for example. The Export-Import Bank allows American companies to compete more easily abroad. So why are they funding French companies to do work in Africa? Is this something is this part of the Green Revolution?
No, this is part of globalism writ large. And if you look at the XM Bank's statement when they gave this loan out, they said, and these are American companies that will be sending over American pipeline materials made by American workers. And to a certain extent, there's truth to that, right? If you have to build a pipeline in Mozambique, you're going to have to get the raw materials from somewhere. And I don't think Mozambique has a huge pipeline industry like America does. So I get that argument, but let's think about it from a larger perspective, right? Would we be selling guns and bullets to enemy nation? Well, we do, actually.
Anyone
and then we build their army, and then they attack us, or they attack our allies, right? So we're giving Mozambique, yes, they may be made by Americans, but we're giving them an industry that will now compete with America's industry. And that is the globalist perspective that is really, really dangerous. Doesn't matter that we're, putting in larger orders from the pipeline company in Iowa to sell pipe to Mozambique. At the larger scale, when this pipeline operates, it's now rival. It's industry versus industry. As when we fund the military of our enemies, it's now army against army. And that's the perspective that is lost by the XM Bank, and why, questionably, why it even exists if it can set such a dangerous futuristic policy.
Yeah, you heard that argument from the Ukraine hawks. over and over again that this money was going to build up American armaments. And this money is going back into the pockets of American companies who are manufacturing and are just getting our arms capabilities and manufacturing up, which is an important thing to do. But the funny thing about our pipeline manufacturers is that they ought to have plenty of business here in the United States.
Yeah.
But the same federal government that is giving loans to foreign countries to build liquid natural gas pipelines in foreign continents thinks that it's unsafe to do so here and won't allow companies to build new pipelines in the United States. How does that incongruence get through federal policy?
Yeah, this is part of the globalist disguised under free trade, but it's part of the globalist order that what you do now is you just offshore all of your perceived sins. So we can't build pipelines in America, but we can let other countries build pipelines with no regard towards workers' rights, human rights, child labor laws, environmental concerns even. Right? The Greens are the best example of this. It's very hard to build solar panels. You have to burn a tremendous amount of coal, and the Greens have conditioned Americans to think coal is evil, coal is bad. So the Chinese get to burn all their coal, and they make solar panels, and then we build them here in America, turning our farmland into these solar hellscapes to make really expensive intermittent electricity 15% of the time. And we say, look how green we are, right? So we offshore what we don't want to see, which is the effects of having to run a solar power industry. We do the same with wind turbines, right? Wind and solar, 75-80% of them are manufactured in communist China. 95% of the raw materials in those industries are in markets controlled by communist China. And yet we say, but it's green, right? So part of your globalist trade policies is you get to offshore slave labor, you get to offshore pollution, you get to offshore all these ills, and then you say it's not, tariff protectionist, this is free trade. It's not. It's masquerading what you don't want to see or you don't want to have to pay for having industry here in America. So you send it to the third world where you can pollute and you can use 9-year-old girls and you say, I'm a free trader. It's all a big racket.
And you imagine if you're one of those people who thinks that manufacturing in the United States is changing the global temperatures, then burning coal in China would as well. But that seems to be completely incongruent. And I used to think this was their revenge for the Opium Wars. I mean, we're not the English, but the idea that they sell us wind turbines and solar panels that make our exports more expensive while they get to use all the coal they want to undermine our industry. It's pretty impressive. But what the Trump administration does have a big challenge ahead of it. Artificial intelligence, speaking of China, that arms race is on. For years now, China has been buying up land in the United States to try to power and get the energy that it needs to mine Bitcoin and other aspects of this new technology. It requires a colossal level of energy. Northern Virginia is filled with data centers that already take up huge amounts of energy, huge amounts of water to keep those things cool, and that's going to get worse, or harder at least. What are some of the policies that the Trump administration would need, and any American administration would need to pursue in order to make sure that the United States is actually able to keep up and is able to power artificial intelligence and other new technologies?
Yeah, it's a great point. And we actually have a white paper on this that we'll be rolling out shortly. And if you'll invite me back, we can talk about it in detail.
It's a deal.
But this is a huge growing problem because the AI revolution is just beginning, right? We're at the very, very early stages of it. And it's going to demand 2 or 3 times the amount of electricity we currently produce as a nation. And if you think you're going to put up some wind turbines and solar panels to produce that much electricity, you're kidding yourself, right? It's telling that when Microsoft wanted to build this data center in Pennsylvania, they turned to 3 Mile Island. They got permission from Governor Shapiro, and they're opening up Reactor 2. 3 Mile Island, the famous nuclear facility.
They're opening
Microsoft doesn't want. They don't want wind or solar, right? They want nuclear power because it works. So when it comes to AI, we have a huge challenge ahead of us. We have enough fossil fuels, of course we do, to power the AI revolution. But what we're going to need is the political will to reopen. Joe Biden shuttered 100 coal plants nationwide. They all have to be reopened, right? We have to reopen and expand our natural gas footprint as well. And if we don't, if you are a company like, Microsoft, go back to the globalist thing we were talking about. If you're going to build an AI data center, you can build it anywhere in the world. You're going to build it to who's going to give you reliable electricity and stay out of your way. And China will gladly welcome all of the globalists, just like they make their sneakers and their sweatshirts there in their sweatshops. They will gladly build their AI data centers in communist China if the Chinese make them a better deal. So this is a really pivotal moment for American energy policy, because those companies, they have no love for America. They have love for corporatism. And if we don't win them over, they're going to go somewhere else.
Are they actually going to use the 3 Mile Island site?
Yes. Yeah. Reactor 2 was the reactor that they
was Chernobyl unavailable?
Yeah.
Fukushima? That's not great for the PR industry, for the nuclear.
Don't remember, nothing happened at 3 Mile Island. There was an incident that was totally contained. No one even got a cold from it. But the anti-nuclear people, who were the Greens, use it to scare the crap out of Americans that nuclear is something to be afraid of. Remember, 80% of France is powered by nuclear power. And if the French aren't afraid of nuclear, by God, the Americans shouldn't be either.
And the Germans powering theirs down is why they are now freezing to death.
Yeah.
Can the coal plants actually be brought back online? I mean, the end of coal in the United States was obviously pushed along by the federal government. President Barack Obama made it his mission.
Yep.
Remember, Joe Biden was down there to teach them how to code.
Yep.
But at the same time, they were undermined by fracking. They were undermined by liquid natural gas. They were undermined by other aspects of the energy economy, and generally, it was an industry that was struggling already. It seemed.
The the coal demise was totally fabricated by the federal government, by the Obama administration, and they made it favorable to switch your natural gas plant, to your coal plant, over to natural gas. But we had an enormous infrastructure between coal mines, between railroads for transportation purposes, and these coal powered plants. Before Obama began his policies, close to 60% of our country was powered by coal, and we weren't dying. And that's the thing that annoys me, is the coal is dirty. Show me one kid who has asthma from coal and I'll shut down my operation. So they have to lie about coal to scare you that we're better off now that we've shut down coal, right? They'll tell you that coal emissions are down, but emissions are still up and we're all still going to die from climate change. So no matter what you do, you'll never appease the green movement. So let's just take them out of the equation. Coal can be revived for a couple of reasons. One, we have this infrastructure still in place. We have centuries and centuries of coal reserves. And the best thing about coal is that it always works, right? It is a little bit more stable than natural gas, right? People are afraid of natural gas pipelines because natural gas is flammable. A truck full of coal is not volatile, right? It's not as precarious, and it's really inexpensive. And it works, whether the wind is blowing or not blowing, whether the sun is shining or not shining. There's a reason why we built the Industrial Revolution on the backs of coal. And as of now, nothing as good has come along to replace it. There are alternatives, but nothing is as good. And plus, we don't just use coal to make electricity. We need coal for steel. We need coal for cement. We need coal for almost every product that is used to make natural gas or a nuclear plant or frack or drill for oil, etc. So coal is the granddaddy of energy. And if we get rid of coal, we're only making ourselves poorer and weaker.
There's a coal power plant that's been shuttered right next to my house, with including the railroad that's been grown over. That would have brought the coal right there for energy power in Northern Virginia. And I would love to just see that in its heyday, just for an afternoon, and sit there with a six-pack and watch that old American industry going. But I know we're short on time now, but I want to ask you quickly about the president's moves to move into the low-income home energy assistance program. That's something that was established by statute by the federal government, Congress, and it provides money to people who can't afford their energy to make sure they're able to heat in the winter and cool in the summer. And the president didn't destroy the program because Congress established it, but he seems to have laid everyone who works there off. What's the story there? What's the purpose behind that, and why do we want to get rid of lie heap, we'll call it?
Yeah, I think this is just part of the larger DOGE cutting back from government expenditures overall, right? When the government starts paying for services, it does skew a lot of the markets, without a doubt. And so if there are whole neighborhoods where everyone's utility bill is paid for by the government, then what's the incentive on the utility in that area to just keep raising rates because the government's paying for it anyway? So you ask people in these neighborhoods, how much do you pay for electricity? No one really knows because no one's paying the bill and the prices just seem to magically keep going up. So I think there are market factors that are driving that. But I think this is just an effort also of the Trump administration and Secretary Turner there at HUD, et cetera, that we have to stop keeping perpetual poverty programs in place that create systemic poverty, right? The government's done its fair share in creating poverty. Barack Obama shut down coal plants all across the country and drove thousands of people into poverty. Before that, NAFTA did it. J.D. Vance's whole book is about those types of towns that NAFTA destroyed. So government's done its fair share in creating systemic poverty, but a lot of these government welfare programs perpetuate that. And when you have 3, 4, 5, 6 generations of people in government housing, on government assistance, eating government cheese, I think the programs themselves are causing this and are perpetuating it. And I think that's what President Trump is trying to address on a much larger level. And I got to tell you, the quick thing about him, there is no man on earth, let alone a politician, who would risk so much who didn't actually believe this. You watch what the Dow did the last couple of days. You look what he's doing with a program like that. This has no Republican would have the backbone to do any of these things if they didn't truly believe that it was good for the country. They would always find a way to pivot and caveat. And President Trump, his backbone is remarkable, and he is risking a lot, including, quite frankly, his own self and as safety and health, to get rid of these systemic, abusive, terrible policies. And it's remarkable to watch in real time.
And you can tell that these sorts of programs also help subsidize just the insane energy policies of different states. Like Delaware, where I know you were just working, where they demand renewables, and now the energy bills for empty houses are hundreds of dollars. Or California, of course, where they create energy poverty with all the regulations. But I do hope that those Republican and Democrat state governments do pay attention. Because if you're North Dakota or you're Texas, it's going to get cold in the winter, it's going to get hot in the summer, and you do not want old grandma pensioners struggling through that too much. Daniel Turner with Power of the Future. Where can people find you on Twitter and find you online?
Daniel Turner PTF for Power of the Future on social media and powerofthefuture.com. And as always, it's great to be on the program with you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. I'll see you again soon when that white paper comes out.
Thank you.
Do we have a measles outbreak or a mainstream media epidemic? We'll have your answers after this. Well, we're all out here trying to make America healthy again. RFK Jr. has come under fire from mainstream media for measles deaths, right? They're reporting the measles outbreaks that are popping up nationwide. So this led us to the question on X to say, I wanted to see if you actually believe these reports or if you think that they're being exaggerated. 5% said, yes, I believe the reports. Apparently, I don't know if they watch a show or not, or if they just voted on the poll, but 82% of you said, no, they are exaggerated. 12% said that they need more info. Now, the Hill out there, they're melting down over RFK Jr., right? They're saying, oh, the measles outbreaks, it's hit 20 states. Texas, right where we are, apparently has about 500 cases. It's just interesting to see, but their headline there on the Hill, how many measles deaths will it take for RFK Jr. to step down? You can see what they're trying to do already.
I mean, it really is crazy. I mean, this is the era of Maha. This is ridiculous. And there is a case to be made about the cause of the rise in measles that I won't say on air lest we be ripped off of the air on YouTube, that it comes from the Maha crowd that actually is quite convincing. There's some real problems with certain manufacturers out there. But let's just leave it at that.
I would say certain manufacturers and the Tom Homan crowd might have something to do with it as well, right? Like everybody's just going through it and adding those few things together. But it is interesting, right? Just knowing the way that they went and attacked. They tried to get Pete Hegseth involved with the Signal chat thing, and it wasn't even him that was a part of it. And now they're like, oh, RFK Jr., we need to blame him for everything that's going on with the measles. And the guy just got there.
Don't you feel like it's too little too early? I mean, it feels like this is not going to work. This is not going to work.
No, but something that is going to work is you, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump all together having similar thoughts.
Well, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the tariffs issue and how people react to it and why it became such a big explosion this week. And it revealed something that we haven't seen for a while. It revealed some really actually disgusting and evil things going on in this country and how people think about their fellow countrymen. And what I mean by that is this. Look, my entire life, I have heard very important people tell regular Americans during COVID, 2008 crash, now over and over again, that we all have to suffer for the sake of the longer term common good of the country. And it's, you just got to suck it up. It's going to be painful, but we're going to get through it. I've heard this my entire life. And I noticed that there's one group of people that hasn't been talking that way this week. They haven't been talking that way about the tariffs and the pain it might cause them. So if you're struggling to understand right now why so many of your fellow Americans aren't panicking, why they aren't panicking, this is why. This is why. In 2019, Tucker Carlson gave an incredible monologue, never forget it, in January of that year that had everyone talking. Let's listen to just a little taste of this.
Donald Trump rode a surge of popular discontent all the way to the White House. Does he understand the political revolution that he harnessed? Can he reverse the economic and cultural trends that are destroying America? Those are open questions. But they're less relevant than we think. At some point, Donald Trump will be gone. The rest of us will be gone too. The country will remain. What kind of country will it be then? How do we want our grandchildren to live? Those are the only questions that matter. The answer to them used to be obvious. The overriding goal for America is more prosperity, meaning cheaper consumer goods. But is that still true? Does anyone still believe that cheaper iPhones or more Amazon deliveries of plastic garbage from China are going to make us happy? They haven't so far. A lot of Americans are drowning in stuff, and yet drug addiction and suicide are depopulating large parts of the country. Anyone who thinks the health of a nation can be summed up in GDP is an idiot. The goal for America is both simpler and more elusive than mere prosperity. It's happiness. There are a lot of ingredients in being happy. Dignity, purpose, self-control, independence, above all, deep relationships with other people. Those are the things that you want for your children. They're what our leaders should want for us and would want if they cared. But our leaders don't care. We are ruled by mercenaries who feel no long-term obligation to the people they rule.
Notice that last bit is they don't care. They feel no obligation. That triggered a lot of reaction at the time that I will never forget. National Review attacked a bunch of conservatives, a bunch of neoconservatives, attacked Tucker viciously for this populist monologue. They did. They said, and I'll never forget seeing them say this, that it didn't matter if leaders cared or not for their citizens. Why would they say such a thing? Why would they say that? At the time, I argued that Tucker was right. I wrote an article in 2019 saying Tucker was right, and that actually led to me meeting Tucker Carlson for the first time, which was incredible. But he had said something that no one else had said, and he triggered a response that I saw nowhere else on the right. And it was conservatives saying it doesn't matter if people care. Let me tell you why I care. I care because I was born in Broome County, New York. Broome County is the most impoverished county in New York State. And one day while I was there not too long ago in Endicott, New York, in Broome County, I took these photos on a Sunday. This is the main street in Endicott, New York, the main drag. That's a closed public school. Those signs say, stay out, go away. That used to be a department store. I was born there. I went back there to work several times. My family I still have family there. That right there is the back of the office complex that I was working at. That's not a third world country. That's a place that has been devastated over the decades by IBM leaving, Endicott Johnson, the shoe company, leaving. I was born in nearby Johnson City. And I worked at a shampoo factory. I'll never forget this, in the 2000s. Many of you have had these experiences. I worked in the late 90s, early 2000s one summer at a shampoo factory, and I was happy to be leaving because I was only there for 3 months, and it was pretty hellish, let me tell you, Jill. And I'm on top of a 2,000-ton tank, and I wrap it like this and go, you know what? Thankfully, 2 weeks and I'm out of here. And the guy next to me wraps the tank and looks at me and says, you know what? 15 years, and I get my pension. 3 years later, that place was closed down and all those people lost their jobs. That's why people are angry, because no one came to help them during that entire time, right? The only thing that Endicott got, the only thing that Broome County got from the wealthy people who care along the coast was buses full of impoverished criminals from New York City, and even recently, immigrants, wandering cornfields in upstate New York. No one cared. And that's why this week, none of us care about any of the pain that comes out of the tariffs. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter. The tariffs may work, they may not, but people who have been in this situation for so long, been lied to for so long, and been told it doesn't matter, that no one cares about them for so long, are ready for something new.
When you talk about suffering for the good of the country, it's usually only one group that has to suffer. And let's go back to the Hunger Games. It's not the elites in Washington, D.C., but it's actually those people out in District, 11, 12, 13. It's the everyday people that have to suffer. The elites now in Washington, D.C., the entire way through. Oh, they wouldn't feel the pain while these things were happening in the old days. Now they're trying to they're attempting to level the playing field for everyday Americans.
And let me say this, it's not about wealth. It's not a class war in the sense that, people from District 12 or from Broome County hate you because you have money, or I or anyone else hates anyone who has money. Being successful is great. We're all about the American dream. But in America, you should have the right to be successful and to let your drive lead to success, but not at the expense of your fellow Americans. You should become wealthy and successful by helping them, not hurting them.
Yeah, and the cheap Chinese stuff, that is a theme that keeps coming up over and over and over again this week is in particular, because how much importance are you going to put on the cheap things that we get from China versus making things in America great?
You know where I stand.
It's a very powerful way to end this show. So thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back here with more tomorrow night.